Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Archana Solanki. Here are the headlines we're tracking this evening. The Monetary Policy Committee delivers yet another hawkish status quo. RBI raises the inflation forecast even as it expects the recent spike in prices to be short-lived, retains the GDP forecast for this fiscal at 6.5%. Financial stocks tumble after RBI moves to drain liquidity by 1 lakh crore rupees, asks banks to maintain an incremental cash reserve ratio of 10%. Sensex declines over 300 points. Rupee gains strength. 10-year bond yields soften in trade. Even as prices of pulses and vegetables like tomato continue to rise, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman says the government has taken enough steps to contain inflation, tells Parliament that the government will continue to distribute tomatoes at cheaper rates through its cooperatives. The National Company Law Tribunal approves the $10 billion merger between Zee Entertainment and Sony India, dismisses all objections in the case. Sony will indirectly hold more than 50% stake in the merged entity. Shares of Zee Entertainment hit upper circuit in trade. China slams the US government after the White House banned a range of US investments into high-tech companies in China, citing national security risk. China calls the move blatant economic coercion, but stopped short of retaliating immediately. Disney reports a mixed set of quarterly earnings dragged down by the India business. Disney Plus Hotstar loses 1.25 crore subscribers in India after losing out on the rights to broadcast the IPL. Union government chooses to keep the judiciary out of the process of appointing election commissioners. A new bill proposes appointment by a panel comprising Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition and one cabinet minister. The Supreme Court had on 2nd of March directed for the appointment of a panel that includes the Chief Justice till a new law is put in place. Parliament debates the no confidence motion for the third and final day. Prime Minister Modi is set to address Parliament this evening. IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav tells CNBC-TV18 that the Digital Personal Data Protection Bill could not be prescriptive. He says wants to ensure that the law doesn't become redundant with technological evolution, assures that large data sets like COVID, Aadhaar will continue to be accountable under the law. That's an exclusive. The government makes it mandatory for health influencers presenting themselves as experts to provide a clear disclaimer. Medical practitioners must disclose that they are certified experts while endorsing a product. The government says violations will lead to penalties under the Consumer Protection Act. All right, the big corporate story. The National Company Law Tribunal has approved a merger deal between Zee Entertainment and Sony. The merger, which was announced in 2021, was delayed due to a slew of legal and regulatory hurdles. Following the approval, stock of Zee Entertainment went up by nearly 15%. Yes joins us with the details.
Well, certainly a big positive coming for Zee Entertainment from NCLT or the National Company Law Tribunal. The tribunal today in its order has approved the merger scheme between Zee Entertainment and Sony. Also importantly, along with that, NCLT has said that it has dismissed all the objections which are raised by the dissenting parties as far as the scheme of arrangement between the two companies, that is Zee Entertainment and Sony, is concerned. Of course, there were dissenting parties, as we had reported earlier in this particular scheme of arrangement. There were creditors like Axis Finance, JC Flower ARC, IDBI Bank, IMAX Corp, as well as IDBI Trusteeship, which had raised their objections with respect to the scheme of arrangement. And to be precise, the non-compete element as far as the scheme of arrangement between Zee Entertainment and Sony is concerned. There were exchanges like BSE and NSE also who had raised their objections. They had said that there is an impending order from market regulator SEBI against the promoters of Zee Entertainment, that is Subhash Chandra as well as Puneet Goenka, and if that order is to be acknowledged by NCLT, then how can Puneet Goenka go ahead and become the managing director of the merged entity? The NCLT today in its order, along with approving the merger scheme, has dismissed all these objections from the dissenting parties. Now, two important things that one will have to look out for as far as the way ahead for this merger is concerned. A, if these dissenting parties, either the creditors or exchanges, go ahead and challenge the dismissal of their objections in front of a higher tribunal, that is NCLT, The second one is that one needs to look forward to SEBI's order against the promoters of Zee Entertainment, Puneet Goenka and Subhash Chandra, because that will sort of decide whether Puneet Goenka can become the managing director of this merged entity between Sony as well as Zee Entertainment.
Right, moving on to another big story that we are tracking this evening. The Monetary Policy Committee announced a status quo policy for the third time in a row as expected. But it was yet another hawkish pause from the central bank as it remains cautious on inflation. The monetary policy unanimously decided to keep the repo rate unchanged at 6.5%. 5 out of 6 members voted to remain focused on withdrawal of accommodation. The RBI also kept the GDP growth forecast unchanged for FY24 at 6.5%. It expects the first quarter of FY25 to record growth of 6.6%. However, the Reserve Bank revised the inflation forecast for the current fiscal to 5.4% from 5.1% earlier on the back of surging vegetable prices. Inflation in the second quarter is expected to touch 6.2%, breaching the central bank's tolerance band. Governor Shaktikanta Das reiterated the RBI's commitment to align inflation to the 4% target.
The recent spike in CPI inflation is expected to be short-lived, going by past trends. In such situations, we need to remain watchful and not resort to any knee-jerk reactions. Now, if these spikes, these idiosyncrasies in CPI inflation, particularly food inflation in particular, shows signs of getting generalized, then we may have to act.
The RBI has also announced an additional cash reserve ratio of 10% on the incremental deposits that banks collected from May 19th to July 28th to neutralize the extra liquidity created by the return of the 2,000 rupee notes. The move is expected to help absorb over 1 lakh crore rupees of excess liquidity. Lata Venkatesh is here with the details. Lata, what does the move mean for the banks?
Okay, well, any CRR is actually a negative for banks because they raise the money at 8%, 7.5%, but 4.5% cannot be lent. Now, there is an increase of 10% of the extra deposits cannot be lent. Now, just look at the amount of deposits. On May 19th, the day the 2,000 rupee removal was announced, the total deposits in the system was 183 lakh crore. And on July 28, it works out to around 194.9 lakh crore. So this extra 11 lakh crore is very unusual. Deposits don't grow so much in 2 months. Okay, clearly it is because of the return of the 2,000 rupee notes, which was mandatory and one-off. Now, apparently 3.14 lakh crore has been returned. 88% came as deposits. The remaining 12% people took back money in other notes. Now, deposits grew, therefore 88% of 3.14 would be 2.76 lakh crore. Why did the remaining 11 lakh crore rise? A large part of it is because the HDFC merger happened with HDFC Bank, which brought a large book of about 6 lakh crore into the system. And that explains why there is an increase. So the point is 10% of that 11 lakh crore that has to be absorbed would increase by, would mean a removal of about 1.1. The governor admitted it's a little more than 1 lakh crore that banks have to keep idle and not lend. They've just keep it idle with the Reserve Bank. It is only for 2 months. It will impact margins, but it is going to impact one bank's margins a little more, and that's HDFC.
Thank you, Lata, for those details. RBI's commentary post the policy led to a sharp fall in the markets as well. Nifty and Sensex ended with cuts of 0.5%, but financials took it on the chin. Nifty Bank saw cuts of close to 1%, except for IndusInd Bank and SBI. All banks closed the session lower. Mid-caps fared better than the blue chips to end flat with a slight negative bias. HDFC Bank, ITC, ICICI Bank and Kotak Mahindra Bank were the major laggards, while Reliance lent support to the Nifty. Zee was the stock of the day and saw its biggest single-day gain in nearly 2 years. The central bank's decision on liquidity led to a stronger rupee. The rupee gained 10 paisa against the dollar. 10-year bond yield softened in trade. The Reserve Bank has proposed to put in place a framework for responsible conduct in lending. The framework looks to ensure greater transparency in resetting of rates for EMIs based on floating interest rates. So what does this mean and how does it impact borrowers? Ritu Singh joins us to explain.
Well, RBI has proposed to bring in more transparency in resetting of interest rates of EMIs, which are based on floating interest loans. Let me explain. The Reserve Bank of India said that based on its supervisory review, it received feedback from the public which indicated that there are several instances of unreasonable long elongation of tenor of floating rate loans by lenders without any proper consent and communication to the borrowers. Remember, the longer your tenor, the more is your interest outgo, and so you'll end up paying a lot more for your loans, and this especially pinches when you talk about home loans for retail borrowers. Therefore, RBI has proposed that they're going to come out with a framework which is going to ensure that lenders communicate very clearly with borrowers for resetting the tenor or the EMI, and also provide options of switching to a fixed interest rate loan or the foreclosure of loan to borrowers. Now, RBI essentially wants more transparent disclosure of these charges to the borrowers. But that said, it is also not going to define what that tenor of the loan is going to be in the framework. It will leave that commercial decision to banks and their boards. The governor even went to the extent of indicating that there could be instances where an unduly long loan tenor is misused by certain lenders to camouflage stress. Because, for example, if the tenor were to be shorter and the EMI payout higher, there could be defaults which can be avoided by elongating the tenor simply. So to avoid all of this, bring in more transparency, expect a new set of guidelines from RBI soon.
This is something which the banks will have to assess, taking into account the payment capacity of the borrower and how long his payment capacity is lasting. It is something which he has to also, the banks have to take into account, take into consideration the age factor. You know, it will vary from individual to individual, the age factor, the payment capacity. And also it is necessary that, to avoid unduly long elongation, which sometimes may going forward, camouflage and underlying stress in a particular loan. So therefore, the extension of tenor has to be for a reasonable period.
Meanwhile, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman told Parliament that the government's policies have led India to transform from fragile to the fastest growing economy. She added India will grow at 6.5% as projected by the RBI and global agencies at a time when global economy is expected to see a decline in 2023. On inflation, the Finance Minister said the government has taken enough steps to contain inflation. She told Parliament that the government will continue to distribute tomatoes at cheaper rates through its cooperatives.
2013 India was declared as a fragile economy. उसी मॉर्गन स्टैनली आज भारत को अपग्रेड करते हैं. हमारे रियल जीडीपी ग्रोथ 7.2 2022-23 में हुआ, and it is projected to grow at 6.5% in 23-24. India is in a rare position, sir, of being optimistic and positive for its future growth. Group of ministers which has been taking timely steps to contain the high prices which are hitting common citizens. So, tur import in the current year is higher than that of the Kharif season, that of the corresponding year last year. Already prices in Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, the wholesale mandis of tomato has started coming down below 100%, 100 rupees. Opposition-ruled states have not reduced the price of fuel, as a result of which inflation in those states are still continuing to be high.
Global rice prices surged close to 12-year high after India's recent export ban on rice and adverse weather conditions. This according to the United Nations Food Agency, whose rice price index was up close to 20% compared to last year. The agency's report also predicted a further rise as El Nino could further exacerbate risks on global production in other major Asian rice producers. In global earnings, Disney posted a mixed set of results for the third quarter. The company reported a 4% jump in revenue. However, subscriber losses has continued to mount over the last 3 months, reporting a 7.4% decline. The majority subscriber loss came from Disney's India business, where the company saw a drop of 24%. And it's time for a short break, but coming up next, Parliament debates the no confidence motion for the third and final day. More details when we return. Welcome back. The no confidence motion debate in the Lok Sabha intensified as it entered its last leg. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that the NDA has transformed India with deliveries as against empty promises in the UPA era. Trinamool MP Mahua Moitra termed the violence in Manipur as hate crime. Leader of opposition Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary also took a jibe at the government's Quit India campaign. Prime Minister Modi is slated to speak in the Lok Sabha anytime now, after which the no confidence vote will be held.
Words like banega, milega, ये सब हो गया अभी. अब वो नहीं है. जनता आजकल क्या उपयोग कर रहे हैं? बन गए, मिल गए और आ गए. यही हो रही है शब्दावली. मैं उदाहरण के लिए बोल रही हूँ. यूपीए के समय बिजली आएगी करते थे लोग. अभी बिजली आ गई. गैस कनेक्शन मिलेगा. आज गैस कनेक्शन मिल गया. वाटर कनेक्शन मिलेगा करते थे यूपीए में, अभी मिल गया.
हमारा बात साफ है सर. क्विट इंडिया होना चाहिए. क्विट इंडिया होना चाहिए. सांप्रदायिकरण से क्विट इंडिया, ध्रुवीकरण से क्विट इंडिया, भगवाकरण से क्विट इंडिया. क्विट इंडिया में करना ही पड़ेगा.
We haven't heard of one change in the police force. We have not heard of one change in the government. We have not heard of one person taking responsibility. As a government in the center, which is also ruling the state of Manipur, this is your biggest failure of the double engine Sarkar. Everyone asks, if not Modi ji, then who? This inaction on Manipur, Honorable Prime Minister, where you had absolute power to intervene but did not, is a cornerstone after which India will say anyone but Modi.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business 360. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC-TV18. The news continues on the other side.